How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video, we're going to talk about our next potential winter storms that could impact the Midwest and the Northeast, where we could see two snowstorms within only the next few days. So, if we were to take a look right now at the GFS model, we see that this storm system that impacted the Northeast pretty hard with some of the heaviest snowfalls some of these areas have seen in over 3 years, as well as coastal flooding in some isolated areas and bringing strong gusty winds along the coast. It has now moved out to sea, and it's bringing somewhat of a stronger northerly flow, so that cold air is still lingering around. Watch out for black ice, because I know in a lot of these areas it did go above freezing once the storm system moved to the east of you guys, which meant that some of the snow melted, but it's expected to refreeze tonight as temperatures will fall below freezing, so that certainly could raise a concern of black ice. So if you see any roadways that looks wet, chances are that that area is pretty much covered with black ice, so you definitely need to take the right precautions over the Northeast for tonight and the next several nights as the snowfall begins to melt and refreeze over the next few days. But moving forward, we see for the most part, it's mainly clear throughout the U.S. We do have this Clipper system moving through, which is expected to be the next snow event moving through the Midwest. So if we were to continue to move forward with the forecast, we see that by the Wednesday timeframe, we see that this area does have a decent amount of cold air behind it, and there is a ridge that's building just to the east of it, which will enhance the southerly flow on the southern side of this low to enhance the instability and enhance the convective activity to bring some snow showers over the Great Lakes. So at this point, the forecast is fairly certain with this low pressure system, because of course we're only 24 to 48 hours out, so there isn't really any significant changes that could occur between now and, let's say, tomorrow or the next day when it comes to this storm system. So you definitely need to prepare as if this is going to happen, as if this exact scenario is going to happen, because like I said, chances are we won't see any significant changes with the forecast with this storm system. But with this storm system, we do see the area of snowfall isn't really very large or extensive over a relatively large area, and the snowfall, it could be heavy, but since the area of snow is so small, it won't last for a very long time. So you shouldn't expect anything more than, let's say, 5 inches of snowfall from this Clipper system as it moves through Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern portion of Iowa. And moving forward with the forecast, this would happen around Thursday morning. And it seems like the snow will be just to the north of Chicago in this scenario, as it seems like the GFS model is leaning towards this ridge being just strong enough to steer this just to the north of Chicago, so it might be a little bit too warm to receive accumulating snowfall. But that can't be said for Milwaukee, where Milwaukee, it's going to be a relatively close forecast for you guys, whether or not you're going to be in a rain snow line. So don't be surprised if you maybe see maybe up to 4 inches of snowfall, but at the same time, don't be surprised if you see no snowfall accumulation at all. It's going to be one of those forecasts for Milwaukee where, depending on where that rain snow line is, that'll play a big role in terms of how much snowfall accumulation you receive. And then by the Thursday afternoon time frame, this will move into Michigan, more specifically northern Michigan. So Detroit should likely miss out on this, and then eventually it should enter the Northeast. And typically, when it comes to Clipper systems moving through the Midwest, the rain snow line typically begins to move further and further northward as it approaches the East Coast, mainly due to the fact that the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf Stream especially acts as a moderator that moderates the temperature right up along the coast to be a little bit warmer than what you typically see a little bit further westward, because of course water cools down and heats up a lot more slowly than the air, as well as just the surface in general. So we typically see the ocean temperature lag behind the air temperature during the winter time. So the temperatures off the Jersey Shore, let's say, they're right around the 40s, which typically plays a role in at least moderating the temperature a bit to not be as cold as a city like Chicago, even though Chicago is approximately at the same latitude. But in this scenario, the rain snow line won't move further northward, and in fact, it will move further southward. And the reason why is because, like I said earlier, this storm system that just passed through the Northeast is still going to bring a northerly flow over the next 48 hours, which will bring down that cooler air over the Northeast and make it stick around a little bit more, and that'll enhance the amount of cold air just enough for the snowfall to potentially move to the more coastal areas right around the Thursday night into Friday morning time frame. We see that some snowfall moves into northern New Jersey, southern New England especially gets involved, as I expect the worst of the snowfall, in fact, to be right over New England, where Boston could maybe receive 2 to 4 inches of snowfall from this Clipper system on top of the snow you've already experienced today. And same goes for many areas of southern New England, as I'll actually say that it is likely at this point that you will receive quite, I wouldn't say a ton of additional snowfall on top of what you've experienced, but a decent amount of additional snowfall, where you could receive anywhere between 1 to 3 to 2 to 4 inches right throughout all portions of New England. However, in the areas further southward, like New York City, you're probably wondering if the snow will move far south enough to reach you guys. And while I think it's going to be more of a mixing right over New York City, and maybe it could be an all snow event depending on the temperature, I don't expect as much accumulation because, as you could probably tell with this storm system, most of the heavy convective activity is located just to the north of New York City, as New York City would sort of get brushed from the worst of this storm system on the southern end, where there isn't as much convective activity or the precipitation isn't as heavy. So I expect less than an inch of snowfall right over northern New Jersey and New York City. Maybe that could be wrong. Maybe we do see maybe more than an inch, but I definitely can't imagine seeing more than 2 to 3 inches of snowfall, at least in northern New Jersey, New York City, and Long Island, as it seems like you guys will be a little bit too far south to receive the heaviest of snowfall. And that's not even equating the possibility that the temperature might just be too warm to receive accumulating snowfall. So in those areas, you should stay safe from the worst of the impacts, as I expect the worst of the impacts to be over New England right around Friday morning. And continuing to move forward into Friday noontime, most of the heaviest snowfall should have moved out. There could be some flurries right over northern New England, but not much outside of that. But that's when we need to focus on our next major winter storm that could impact the Midwest and Northeast, that could maybe be a little bit more significant. So taking a look at this storm system, this will originate from a trough coming off the Pacific Northwest coast. There's going to be quite a bit of cold air behind it, and it's going to already come bundled in with a decent amount of convective activity moving into the Midwest. So this snowfall should at least be heavier initially speaking. And the storm system will be stronger than this first one as it moves towards the Midwest. And continuing to move forward with the forecast, we do see that the area of convective activity does become a little bit more extensive than the previous snowstorm. The snowfall does become a little bit more heavy, and this is, by the way, right around the Friday morning time frame, but it will quickly move towards Illinois, northern Missouri, and Iowa right around the Friday afternoon to Friday evening time frame. As the thing that might limit the amount of snowfall you'll receive is the fact that, for one thing, is that although the storm system is larger than this next storm system, the thing is that it's still relatively small, and it's moving relatively quickly as well. So it's unlikely you're gonna see a ton of snowfall, but it's at least something to keep in mind on your Friday evening commute here throughout northern Missouri, Illinois, and maybe this could move a little bit further northward into Chicago. Really, the key will be the amount ridging just to the south of it. But moving forward to the forecast, by the Saturday overnight hours, this should move into Ohio, Indiana as well, and this could include the border of Kentucky and Ohio as well, and maybe Louisville could get involved with some wintry precipitation. And then moving forward, by the Saturday morning time frame, during the daytime, we see that this snowfall eventually does move into the mid-Atlantic. And for the areas that might have been disappointed that you didn't receive any accumulating snowfall from this past storm system, that could change for those areas further southward, because with this storm system Places like Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and the Delmar Peninsula could get impacted a little bit more when it comes to snowfall from this storm system, and it could be a little bit heavier to where you may experience anywhere between 2 to 4 inches of snowfall. But we see that although there's a decent amount of cold air behind it, there still isn't a ton of instability for this storm system to, let's say, rapidly intensify, but there's just enough to bring a decent amount of snowfall right over the Ohio Valley and extending into the mid-Atlantic. As we do see, the ridging is weak enough to a point where this won't really strengthen that much, because this warmer air that's a little bit further southward won't interact with the cooler air a little bit further northward, which will certainly limit the amount this will strengthen, at least on land. That will change once it moves off the coast, but it's going to be well off the coast at this point. Not much to worry about. But in terms of the amount of snowfall you should expect in a scenario like this, so if we were to take a look at that, let's take a look at the snowfall forecast from the GFS model from these next two storm systems. So ignore the snowfall you see right here. This is from today's snowstorm we've just experienced, and make sure to stay tuned for my winter update video when it comes to this snowstorm. I just need to edit it and everything, and I'll upload that to show you guys how it was like in northern New Jersey, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But taking a look at the next two snowstorms, so this is the first one. We see that you could experience anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snowfall right over southern Wisconsin, Green Bay, Milwaukee could get involved, northern Iowa, even southern Minnesota, just south of Minneapolis, could get involved with 1 to 3 to potentially 3 to 5 inches of snowfall, as forecast, at least for this first storm system, is relatively high with this point at this point. And then moving forward with the forecast, we see that northeast from this storm system does experience a decent amount of snowfall, especially in the higher elevations of the Adirondacks, where you could see 3 to 6 to potentially 6 to 8 inches of snowfall in the extreme higher elevations. And for other areas like Massachusetts and southern New England, you could experience 1 to 3 inches of snowfall from this storm system. And then when it comes to this second storm system, we see that this does bring a decent amount of snowfall right over the mid-Atlantic, especially right over Washington, D.C., Baltimore, southern New Jersey, and Philadelphia all experienced 3 to 6 inches of snowfall from this storm system, which is definitely something to keep in mind, as there's still a bit more uncertainty regarding that forecast, as there's still that possibility that maybe the snow could move a little bit further northward. Maybe this strengthens a little bit more than anticipated if we do see enough instability and just enough ridging. There's still a lot of time to iron out the details with this storm system, but I'll make sure to keep you guys updated over the next few days. Now, on the flip side, if we were to take a look at the European model, while the European model is showing a similar forecast regarding this first snowstorm, it's a little bit different when we take a look at the second snowstorm that would move through the Friday to Saturday timeframe. So this is the first snowstorm. We clearly see very similar to what the GFS model is stating, but the snowfall is focusing a little bit further northward, while northern Iowa doesn't experience impacts. But for the most part, you should expect in this general area, like most of Wisconsin, southern Minneapolis, and southern South Dakota, you should expect right around 3 to 6 inches of snowfall from this storm system, and around 1 to 3 for southern New England. But this second snowstorm, we see that the European model expects the snowfall to be a little bit further southward, thanks to a weaker amount of ridging and a stronger jet stream dip, which will force the storm system to move a little bit further southward, to the point where the snowfall will focus in a little bit further southward. So places like Washington, D.C. Still experience snowfall, but not necessarily as much in Philadelphia or New York City at all receives any snowfall. So definitely a lot to keep in mind with this forecast. Let's take a look at the European model's forecast when it comes to the radar, and we clearly see the storm system is quite a bit further southward thanks to a weaker amount of ridging. If we were to see this ridging strengthen a little bit more and this dip intensify a little bit more, that will certainly force the storm system to take a track further southward. So we're definitely going to need to keep in mind of how strong northerly winds will be associated with this storm system, because the stronger it is, then the more likely this storm system would move further southward. So definitely pay close attention to that if you want a higher amount of certainty when it comes to this storm system right here. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.